Carol Todd joins us now from Port Coquitlam, BC. Carol, I want to thank you, first of all, for coming on the program tonight, but also want to get your sense of where you're at after this weekend's decision.
It's been a big weekend. The verdict came down, and it was faster than anyone could have imagined. Just hearing the guilty 5 times, I guess I have to say, honestly, I was surprised, but relieved that I heard that.
10 years on, what are the things that tech companies or governments or parents should be doing but aren't doing?
Well, I'm also an educator, so that gives me some experience also with working with kids and in the school systems, right? We've talked a lot about bullying and cyberbullying, and we still talk about it. We have Pink Shirt Day, but ultimately it's about behaviors and behaviors of respect, of kindness, of trust, and those are the things that we have to instill and talk about with our children from a very young age, and it's okay to talk about those. And there's storybooks and there's movies, but it's that discussion to talk about how they treat others, right? And how you would like to be treated. In terms of government, I believe that, back in 2015, there was Bill C-13, and it was called the cyberbullying legislation that was brought about because of Amanda and Rehtaeh Parsons. I think it's time to revisit that one because they call it a cyberbullying law, but it deals with the sending of intimate images without consent. And in 2015, that was the beginning of the conversation, but we're now in 2022, and it's a much bigger and broader conversation. So I'd like to revisit that with, maybe I'll start with my local MP. With tech companies, they've done some things. Obviously, it's not enough. It's filters they need to put in safety measures so that, kids don't get caught up in that vortex, that predators online can't go and find young children and youth and sexually exploit them. But it's also talking to adults, parents, law enforcement, caregivers, the whole realm about what sextortion, exploitation, human trafficking is. We haven't talked about that a whole lot, and it's become one of those things that the RCMP, the FBI, cybertips.ca, Canadian Centre for Child Protection has seen an increase in.
Lastly, I want to ask you about your daughter. We've just gone through 9 weeks of a trial, and as you note, lots of technical discussions. But you've also told me that the picture over your right shoulder was something done by your daughter. What should we know about Amanda?
What we should know about Amanda is that she had a kind soul. She was vulnerable. She had learning differences, right? And lots of kids didn't accept that. And what we have to know is that she would have never hurt a soul, but there were souls out there that wanted to hurt her. And a lot of it started with Mr. Coban and what he did initially, because her victimization started in 2009, and she was 12 years old. And a year later, he released that image to all her friends and relatives, right? And that started a downhill swing of bullying and cyberbullying among her peers. And then every time Amanda shifted to a different school or a different home, Mr. Coban's profiles followed her and started it all over again, right? So Amanda didn't have a chance in order to have a fresh start, but there was a point where she had to stick up for herself. And then I'm sure she said or did things that I wouldn't approve as a mom, but she was doing it to defend herself. And she was already, all her onion layers were already peeled away, right? So.
Carol Todd, thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you for having me.